Okay, my name is Corey Cornell. I'm here with my great grandfather, and we are going to be talking about his life in San Francisco during the war. Today is Sunday, October 22nd, 2006, and we are at Villa Sarah in Salinas, California. And I would just like to thank my great grandfather now for doing this. I really appreciate that. I just want to ask you, is it okay that we're recording this?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, awesome. Well, just to start, what was it like, growing up in San Francisco as a child? What year were you born, and then?
Well, I was born in 1910, in December 1910, and lived in San Francisco in the North Beach section, which was composed mostly of Italian folks. I enjoyed every minute growing up there because there was always something to do with other kids, and there were plenty of them. For entertainment, we played lots of sports. For one thing, the Salesian Boys Club was just a block from my house, and the San Francisco Boys Club was a block and a half the other direction, and the North Beach Playground was just 2 blocks from my home, so there was always something to do athletically. We played baseball, basketball, the whole thing, every day, every day. It was the most enjoyable thing.
Wow, sounds like a lot of fun. Did you have a lot of siblings?
I was the youngest of 6. I had 3 sisters and 2 brothers. And growing up, of course, being the youngest, I had a lot of overseers. And I had to walk the chalk line, so to speak. But it turned out for the best.
How fun. What did you do for education? What schools did you go to, and what interested you when you went to school?
Should I start work from primary schools?
Just wherever it was important to you. So if you want to start in high school or...
Yeah, well, I went to grammar school. I started the Washington Grammar and then transferred over to Hancock. And in the 8th grade, I transferred out to Sacred Heart and stayed there for the 8th and just the end of the 9th grade, when it was 1927 at this point. My father passed away in April of that year, and I thought I'd get some kind of a job just for summer vacations, and I applied at the French American Bank in San Francisco and was hired as an errand boy. Well, my first paycheck felt so good that I never went back to school. So from French American Bank, it became Bank of Italy and then Bank of America. And I stayed with that company for 47 years. I retired in 1974.
Wow. What was your work like?
My work was very good. I enjoyed every minute of it. I started as an errand boy and worked my way to a bookkeeper, to a teller, to assistant cashier, to assistant vice president, and that's when I retired. But it's a wonderful experience. The bank offered to send each one of its employees to a banking school, which was called the American Institute of Banking, which I attended for several semesters, I guess. And the bank paid expenses. If you completed a course, the bank would pay your tuition. And that's the way it stood.
So that was basically like the education that you got instead of going to college and stuff like that?
No, unfortunately I didn't go to college, no.
Did you have a lot of friends that were going to college?
No, seriously, in those days I didn't know of anybody who went on to college. I graduated high school and thought of going to work, and that was the end. We didn't have the opportunities if you could say that, as they have now. So, no, I had no college experience.
What was it like during, like when the Depression came along and all of that?
Depression came along in 1929, I believe, and it was really a depression. Lots of people lost their jobs. I was one of the fortunate ones. The bank kept their employees as best they could. They had us take 2 weeks off each year without pay and 2 weeks vacation with pay, and that's the only loss of salary I've ever had. So I've worked for 47 years and might say I never lost a day's pay.
We're looking at something that was from around that time, their gas stamps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about them, what they're used for?
Well, when the war started, of course, there was rationing going on, so the ration board issued what they call ration stamps, A's and B's stamps, and they were in the form of a coupon, and we were entitled to so many tanks of gasoline. However, if you did any government work or connected with any service, you were entitled to more gasoline. In my case, I was transferred by the bank to work at a facility in Pittsburgh, which was the port of embarkation at the time, and I substituted and did some relief work up there at one of the branches, and so that may have entitled me to a 3A classification during the war. And that's where I ended up, as far as I know. I got down to 2A and then 1A, but the war was ended by the time I was called.
What was it like having stuff like rations and stuff like that?
Well, it was difficult in a way. Lines were formed for gasoline, and things were rationed that you didn't imagine. And we had blackouts at night, draw all the blinds, and at one point for a while I was air raid warden, which meant that I had to get out and patrol the one block that I was living and be sure that all lights were out, especially when there's an air raid warning. And we've had several of those that I recall.
Oh, wow. So, so basically, like, you would be walking around just when there was one, so that you were in charge of that?
Just that one block.
Yeah.
And this was down in West Berkeley. But on one side of us, on one side of the home where we were living, there was a social service workers, and they'd only work during the day. And on the other side, which took up the other half of the block, was their social service for the children, and they were never there in the evening. So being an air raid warden was kind of easy in my case, because there were no lights to worry about on that side of the street.
Oh,
So
wow.
what we had to think about was the residents who might be out or listening to a radio or reading, but keeping a light lit, and that's what we had to check.
Okay. What was the reason behind those? Just so if people were trying to attack, or
You mean
like the
as far-
blackouts?
The blackouts? In the event of an air raid,
Mm.
the lights are spotted very easily, my understanding is,
Yeah.
if there's lights down on the ground.
Did people get very frightened?
Not really, no, we've never experienced anything, so I guess we didn't know what to expect, so we just went along with whatever way it happened.
Interesting. So, this was obviously during the war, and you didn't go. Why was that? Why didn't you go off to war?
Why didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Well, as I said, I was classified as 3A,
Mm-hmm.
and then I went to work at this Camp Stoneman in Pittsburgh,
Okay.
which was a port of embarkation, and that had something to do with working with the government within.
Uh-huh.
And I remained 3A until, I don't know, probably towards the end of the war I was classified at 1A. Plus the fact we had 3 children at the time, and they weren't really drafting men with that status.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They were taking the younger fellas, of course, and those that had no responsibilities, you might say.
Mm-hmm. What else was it? I'm trying to get a feel for kind of what the atmosphere was like at that time. Were people just, was it a very stressful time for everybody with the war going on, or was it?
No, I can't say it was stressful. We just seemed to go around doing whatever we had to do. Those of us that were working went to work and worked our 8 hours and came home, and thank God our home was still standing.
Mm-hmm.
So the only reports we had was in the newspaper and radio. So we followed that closely.
What was it like once the war was done, after the Depression? What was it like after that?
Well, of course, there's quite a celebration when it ended, and everyone felt relief, I'm sure, especially those who had family returning from the war zone and so forth. But there was those hardships too. There was those families that weren't so fortunate. They had their sons come home. So it's kind of a take it as is. Not much you can do about it.
Did you have family that went to war? Did you have family that went to war?
No, there's no one in my family that went to war. I had 2 brothers, and I don't know if it was because of their age. My brother Dave, the oldest one, of course, was above age, and my brother Eugene was probably in his late 30s at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So they may have been disqualified because of age. I don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm. So, and then you had 3 children at that time. How old were they? You said they were young.
Well, Albert was about 9 months old when the war broke out. Dorothy Ann was about 3.5, and Teresa was on the way. So by the time following April of 1942 came by, we had the 3 children.
Wow.
So,
And then how old were you at this time?
oh gosh, the war was 41. I was born in 10. I was 31 when the war broke out.
Wow. So, we discussed after the war, everyone was really relieved and really happy. You just continued your work at the bank?
Oh yes, I worked for 47 years, continuous. Retired, as I say, in 74. Went to work in 27. Retired in 74.
You said you really enjoyed it, that you loved your work.
Oh
What
yes,
is-
yes, I enjoyed every minute of it, really. I just enjoyed getting, I don't know, doing things, I guess. Meeting people all the time, somebody different, just a joy, I thought.
What was in your day-to-day work? What was it like? What exactly did you do?
What did I do?
Yeah, like what? I know there's a lot of different things you could be doing in a bank.
Well, as I stated, I started as an errand boy,
Yeah.
and then you get to work inside and posting checks, that is, balancing checks, picking up checks from the tellers and balancing, and then the tellers balance their cash with all of these checks and deposits and so forth. And from there, I did the bookkeeping, and then the Depression broke out, and I was transferred from the French American Bank to the headquarters, the Bank of America headquarters, which was on Powell and Market at the time. And there, I did more bookkeeping, and then along came a moratorium where they closed the banks for 2 or 3 days, as I recall, and there was no bank activity at all, just closed. Get things in order, whether it be collateral for outstanding loans or whatever it was. This is what had to be done. So we worked every day during that moratorium, but there was no business, actually walk-in business. So after that, things just perked along as they usually do, and Bank of America kept growing all the time.
Did you ever have any doubts, get worried when all of it started happening that, things could go wrong with the bank and...
No, not really. Because Bank of America was always a leader, and during the moratorium, of course, all banks closed. It wasn't one individual bank; they all closed.
Oh, wow.
So they were all in the same position, I guess. But no, I had no worries about ever being fired or laid off. I just great, just lucky.
I'd like to move in more towards a little bit of your family history, about your parents and when your family came over from Italy and all of that. What did your parents or your grandparents who actually came over from Italy?
My mother and father came over from Italy, Genoa, and landed in New York in 1894. And from there we moved to San Francisco in the North Beach section. And this is where my brothers and my sisters and myself were born, in the North Beach section of San Francisco. My brother Dave worked at the Vulcan Iron Works at the time. My brother Gene was doing some work for a newspaper called Bulletin. And I, being the youngest, wasn't doing anything. So from there, my brother went into business, opened up a ravioli and tagliarini store, and was in that business for several years. And one experience he had, he'd go to work in the morning, and his place of business was only about 2 blocks from his home. He had to walk past the St. Peter's and Paul's Catholic Church. And on 2 or 3 occasions, I can't be sure, someone had placed a bomb on the front door of the church. And this would happen about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And that bomb would go off and would just scare the daylights out of everybody. And he had to walk right past the place. And we thought about that a lot, but it came to pass that they had policemen watching the front entrance of the church for a while. And they finally caught the man who did it.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yes. I don't know how it happened that they caught him, but it seems to me he was, I don't know whether he was shot or what it was, but he was dead.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
So, I don't know what else I could tell you.
Well, you said the community was mostly Italian, stuff like that.
North Beach was primarily Italian. Now, my understanding is that the Italians have moved out of North Beach and the Orientals have mostly taken over. There are more Chinese than there are Italians in North Beach, what I hear. I haven't been there, so I don't know that for sure. But I did know for a long time that the Orientals were moving into North Beach, and that's the way it stands as far as I know. There's nothing wrong with that, excepting that that's the way it is.
Well, they had Chinatown, and it just spread.
Yeah, sure. Chinatown was at the foot of Columbus Avenue and Kearny, I guess. And the Chinese usually stayed on that end of Columbus Avenue. But like everything else, they had to spread out too.
So, why did your family choose to come to San Francisco?
Why?
Specifically.
Gosh, I couldn't answer that, Corey. I don't know. But
You're not sure?
I'm glad that they did, really. I wouldn't know what I would do in New York. I guess I'd grow up like I did now, but you can't beat San Francisco, really. You just had everything at your fingertips. Take a streetcar and go out to the Cliff House, to the beach, and Playland, and Golden Gate Park, and it's great. I miss it.
Mm. So, obviously, well, not obviously, but you just celebrated your 70th wedding anniversary. Why don't you tell me a little bit about meeting your wife and all of that?
Whew. Well, of course, we married in 1936 after a year or two of courtship. Dorothy wanted to be sure of me. So I hung around till she said yes. Well, I guess that's about the end of it. She's been saying yes ever since. Been very fortunate. It's been a perfect wife, really. Yep.
That's awesome. Looking back, you seem, to have very positive feelings towards everything. Would you have done anything differently?
Gosh, Corey, I don't think so. Although I was so young when I went to work, I hardly had even any thought of doing something else,
Mm-hmm.
All I was interested in was a job. And and the way I got the job was ironic to begin with. I had gone down to the San Francisco bank for an interview, and they told me they would call me during vacation time if they needed me. And on my way home, I stopped where my sister was working, and lo and behold, the stenographer at that office, her husband was the operations officer of the French American Bank, and she said, "Gee, I think my husband's looking for an errand boy. Why don't you go down and see him?" So I went down to the French American Bank and talked to this gentleman, and sure enough, they hired me the next day. He said, "Well, come in tomorrow and we'll talk about it." So I went back the next day, and all he talked about was, "You can start right now at $50 a month." So at $50 a month, that was, I don't know, is that a lot of money or not? And right now, it doesn't seem like much, but I guess then it was normal. So, of course, at $50 a month, when I was paying $13 a month rent, we did all right, huh?
Yeah.
Can you imagine $13 a month rent for a nice, it's called a flat then, now they're condominiums. But, yeah, we have 2 bedrooms, a kitchen and a breakfast room and front backyard, whole bit, $13 a month.
Wow.
Yeah, wow, is right.
Nice to have that now.
No way. So I covered 70 years pretty fast,
Well,
but
that was the house that Donna had built after the war.
mhm.
Well, thank you so much. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, it's been a pleasure for me. I've never done anything like this before, but
I don't know how you could remember it all.
maybe you could just file it in your case and forget it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for doing this interview with me.
You're very welcome, Corey, really.